The constituency of Manchester Central was created in 1974. Since then, it has only voted one way.
I'm Labour. Voted Labour all my life.
Still voting
So,
Labour?
I will still vote Labour, yeah.
I do vote, normally Labour,
Last general election, the party won with over 60% of the votes. But that dominance has come with a relatively low turnout, and this might be why. Will you be voting?
I've not decided.
So why wouldn't you vote?
Because either way, like Central Manchester being from my side has always been a Labour seat and it's a safe seat. So I don't feel like my vote is really going to do anything.
I feel like there's too much politics happening at the moment, really. But I'm a Labour voter anyway. Despite of Corbyn, I'm a voter Labour.
But it's the fourth major electoral event in 4 years, creating a kind of political fatigue.
We're just getting fed up with it all. Got the local elections coming up for the mayor. We had the Brexit last year. We're just getting fed up with it all.
I'm bored about it. It's the same old rigmarole. They promise us this, they promise us that, and they never, ever, ever stick to the word.
If there is a fatigue with politics, might this impact the turnout on June the 8th? And if so, how do politicians get their message beyond their supporters? Do you think that for young people like yourself, televised debates would help them to engage in some of the issues?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
In this barbershop, the red-blue divide isn't usually drawn along the lines of politics.
Not really, I don't allow them. This is sports place. We sports guys, so we don't fancy politics. No one talks about politics, only sports things.
So if they had the televised leaders' debates for the leaders of all the political parties to discuss the issues up in the run-up to general election, would you watch it?
To be honest, no.
It's been an exciting few years for those who live and breathe politics. The challenge is how the party leaders now re-energise and engage with everyone else.
Simeon Brown there talking to people who say they feel alienated and not inclined to vote. Or 20-somethings are another group who traditionally haven't turned out in great numbers at elections. So why should they care about this one? I'm joined now by journalist Abi Wilkinson, Conservative activist Darren Grimes, who campaigned for Brexit, and from Glasgow by the writer Peter Geoghegan, who wrote a book about the Scottish referendum. Abi Wilkinson, let me start with you. How widespread would you say the feeling of alienation is among young people?
Well, I mean, I think when you look at the voting figures, you can see that a lot of young people just don't really think politics is relevant to their life. A lot of people say, they're all the same. What's the point? It's not going to change anything. Why should I pay attention? It's nothing to do with me. I think I'm sort of weird for my age group, particularly when I was even younger, to be paying attention to electoral politics.
So really. Most normal people don't. But Darren Grimes, are you weird too? Or, you were putting the positive case for Brexit, but do you think more young people than we think are actually enthused?
I think actually they are, and I think it's the debate at the moment has become a bit stale. People are talking, rerunning the referendum campaign. What we need to do now is talk about the opportunities, bring everyone together and talk about what opportunities young people will have post-Brexit, whether that be immigration and exploring new markets around the world. There are so many opportunities that we need to start talking about, and I think that's why this general election is an important one and one which can enthuse young people around the country.
Peter Geoghegan, let me turn to you. 20-somethings, alienated or enthused?
I think it's interesting, talking here from Scotland. If you go back to the referendum here in 2014, there was a huge increase in turnout, and particularly amongst young people. Lots of young people went out and they registered to vote. And I think part of that was there was a sense that this was a big issue. This was something that really affected the future of lives. And they felt very connected with it. What would be the future of the country they lived in? And I think for young people, it's about trying to connect them in more to politics and trying to give them a sense of what their vote says makes a difference. In the package we just saw from Manchester, you had a young lady who was saying, oh, this is a safe seat, so what's the point to my vote? And I think it's about getting people to see that their vote makes a difference, and also that the issues that are being debated matter to them and matter to their future. Well,
let me put that straight back to Abi Wilkinson. This is an election where young people's votes do matter. Are people going to vote tactically, do you think?
Yeah, I think, people's votes matter enormously. The way we do Brexit will have repercussions. It could last our whole lives. If we cause a self-inflicted recession, you'll have a whole generation of young people trying to start their careers, in very difficult circumstances. They might never get back on track.
But do a lot of your friends get that or not?
So I think it's kind of like it runs a full spectrum. I remember during the referendum itself, I asked a load of my Facebook friends how they were voting, and I was actually quite surprised at the number of people who told me they weren't going to vote at all. So
you've got to enthuse people if you want to win your side of the argument.
But I think if young people, I think we need to do everything we can to persuade young people to pay attention, because this really feels like make or break, to be honest.
Well, Darren Grimes, in a way, you're relying on apathy, aren't you? Because, 75% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted to remain. So if they turn out in large numbers at this election, that could go against your case.
A majority of them didn't register to vote at all, so we definitely have a problem with voter apathy here. But I think we make that optimistic, positive case and we say, look, we'll get a better deal from the European Union if you back Theresa May and her Lancaster House speech, leave that single market, leave that customs union, and give her the hand she needs.
I think there's no reason to believe that's what young people want. 75%, I think, of young people who voted to remain. The kind of problems that you're relying on voters, caring about voters wanting to reduce immigration. Most young people are happy with immigration. They went to school with migrants, some of them are second-generation migrants. And I think, sorry, I was going to say, I think the idea that Theresa May is going to get the sort of deal that's best for young people when they're caring about things like housing, job security is fairly hard to believe when you've got Tories filibustering a bill to protect the employment rights we currently have in the EU, for example.
So this might not be just about Brexit, this election.
We have record employment and the opportunities, like I say, that we can explore in new markets around the world. That should be put forward to young people, and that's what will infuse them. Housing white paper is on the way as well, and they're all things that Theresa May can deliver because we have a strong economy and an economy which jobs and businesses can prosper
What does exploring new markets mean to the average young person? Never mind we're leaving a massive trade area, but most ordinary young people care about their own lives, their jobs, their housing, their family, all of the rest of it. And there's no reason to believe that
Let me just bring in Peter Geoghegan at this point. Scots have voted in national elections every year since 2014. How many young people are going to actually feel like turning out in this election again?
Well, yeah, this is going to be the 7th election, major election in Scotland in less than 3 years. So, yeah, it's a big ask to get people out again. But if you look since the referendum, I think this is an interesting test case for the rest of the United Kingdom. Since the referendum, the turnout was about 85% of the referendum, which is a historic high. It has dropped every election since, but it's still consistently higher than it was before the referendum. So there is still a bit of an engagement, kind of a positive engagement lag in Scotland. And it will be a big question how many young people turn out to vote and how many people turn out to vote in general. I think the sense in Scotland is that this is still a big election, even though we've had a number of elections. We're going to have council elections soon. These are big issues. Whereas the rest of the United Kingdom, I guess, is probably talking a lot about Brexit. In Scotland, independence and unionism will be on the agenda.
But aren't the two intertwined, though?
Very much so. I think Brexit has changed the agenda for the question of independence, both in Scotland and actually also in Northern Ireland. I think that's going to be the big issue here. How post-Brexit, having Scotland voted to stay in the European Union, how is that going to affect the turnout? How is that going to affect the people's vote? The last election, the huge SNP vote. Will we see the same vote this time? And what's going to happen to the people who voted for independence but also voted for Brexit?
And Darren Grimes, let me come back to you. We've been talking about fake news being distributed on Facebook. As a young design student, you received, I think, something over £600,000 to spread the word on Brexit on social media. How can we be convinced that this is going to be a fair election in terms of targeting young people on social media?
Well, I think just using social media in itself is going to reach more young people. Now, of course, in the general election, there will be no fake news. In this country, we do not have a problem with fake news. I think we have reliable news sources that we all use. Tabloids have been going for hundreds of years.
I'm not going to come out with a list of sort of corrections that have been run in our newspapers over the last few years. There's been some quite 3 out of 5 Muslims support. It's all kinds of like horrendous stories. But I do think we Yeah, I
But
think
what
the
about
idea
on Facebook, and how much are people getting their election news online, and how much is that a problem?
I sort of I've sort of found the kind of like mainstream journalists hand-wringing over these sort of fake news sites on Facebook a little bit hypocritical, given that we can't always trust our mainstream media to present things in a fair light. That said, there are obviously you do sometimes see these ridiculous viral stories with no basis in fact, especially in fact the
Abi,
US election.
I'm really sorry, we're going to have to end it there. We could carry on talking about this for donkey's years, but Abi Wilkinson, Darren Grimes and Peter Geoghegan, thank you very much for joining us.